Some transactions that we learned of overnight. JP Morosi rejoining the program on this Wednesday, still from Cooperstown, New York, reveling in the Hall of Fame afterglow and with news on a new deal for Jesus Aguilar, JP.
Yes, Matt. First of all, I would love to just move the Hot Stove show to right here in the Plaque Gallery. I cannot get enough of this place. But as you mentioned, some news. Jesus Aguilar, a one-year, $3 million deal with the Oakland Athletics. According to our own Mark Feinsand, the A's need to add some offense. Of course, they were second from the bottom in runs scored in the major leagues in 2022. They've lost Sean Murphy, was one of the lineup anchors for them. And it appears that Aguilar, who of course finished this past season with the Baltimore Orioles, could bat fourth for them, potentially third or fourth, high up in the lineup. This is a good signing for the A's because you look at Aguilar, you see the numbers for 2020 and 21. When you add those 2 years together, it was an OPS plus of 113 in 182 games. So he had good numbers over those 2 years, a bit of a down year in 2022. A nice stopgap rather, at the very least for the A's before Tyler Soderstrom, their top position player prospect, who is a first baseman, arrives from AAA Las Vegas.
Front office doing what they can in Oakland.
You have a front office who's saber-electrically minded.
Yeah, another saber-electrically minded front office is in Boston, JP, where the Red Sox have acquired a middle infielder.
Adalberto Mondesi. Now, this is a really interesting deal, Matt, because the Red Sox, as we know, in recent weeks, there's been so much conversation about how they will handle that position now that Xander Bogaerts has moved on. How many games at shortstop will we see Kike Hernandez play in 2023? This was a need-for-need move. The Royals wanted to add more pitching, and candidly, Mondesi has been promising at times, but also inconsistent and injured. He had an early season ACL injury in 2022 that knocked him out for the balance of the year. The expectation is, Matt and Bill, that Mondesi should be able to come back and be available to play around opening day of 2023. However, just given his injuries in the past, he is going to need consistent days off. And so we might see Kike Hernandez playing a combination of center field and shortstop. And the other part of last night's transactions for the Red Sox was that Matt Barnes, who was up until last night the longest tenured member of the Red Sox roster, was designated for assignment. Of course, a native New Englander from the great state of Connecticut. He was the player they had to move off the roster to make room for the newly signed Adam Duvall. So a significant transaction for the Red Sox, really in two different ways last night. Adding Mondesi in the Taylor trade, and then also having to DFA someone who's been a part of their World Series team back in 2018.
You know, a lot of people have been critical of the Red Sox this offseason for the, the big splashy headline reasons, Bogaerts, et cetera. They've done some nice little sneaky moves, I think, including Justin Turner, the moves that you just mentioned, JP. You know, they're not going to get bulldozed this year in Boston. I wouldn't be surprised if they sneak up on some people this year. Hey, lastly, let's go to Twitter for this to set you up on this final note. John Heyman putting this out on Twitter. Astros interviewed Guardians assistant GM James Harris for their open GM job, along with longtime baseball man Bobby Evans and Braves exec Dana Brown, three of the finalists. Are these the only three that we know of, JP? And what can you add on the Astros GM search?
Not the only finalists. And in fact, yesterday, as first reported by Jesus Ortiz in the Houston Chronicle, a very interesting story about where that could be going with the Houston Astros. Brad Ausmus is among that group who could be potentially moving into that GM spot. Now, Brad Ausmus, we spent a lot of time in the last couple days talking about his former teammate in Jeff Kent. And Brad Ausmus, interestingly, of course, we had viewed him as a possible GM back early in his career before he became the Tigers field manager and eventually the Angels. So interesting that Brad could be moving back into a front office role. Of course, he was with the A's and the coaching staff in your interview yesterday with Mark Kotze, but Brad Ausmus now potentially viewed as an executive at the GM level with the Houston Astros. As we know, great baseball mind, Dartmouth graduate, so certainly Brad Ausmus part of that conversation. I would double back and mention a bit more on Dana Brown, because we talk about the Atlanta Braves and why they won the World Series in 2021. Dana Brown's draft picks were a huge reason why. He also drafted Michael Harris, advocated for him to be called up early this season. Spencer Strider, Austin Riley, all that homegrown talent, Matt and Bill. Dana Brown, one of the best evaluators in the game, period, and is viewed as a future GM, whether it's in Houston now or sometime in the future. Dana Brown, I believe, will be a GM and a great one at that.
Yep.